So before my brother died, we had been in student ministry on a Sunday morning. Wow, Chad, I had not thought about that before. You just said that. We had been in student ministry on a Sunday morning, and we were singing a song called Take My World Apart by Jars of Clay. And I remember sitting in the service, and the student minister at the time, Chris, getting on the microphone and telling us, don't sing this song. Don't sing these words if you don't really want him to take your world apart, because he will. And again, at the time, I was walking with the Lord. I was feeling his nearness and his presence, and I was never closer to him than I was before that. And so I confidently prayed, take my world apart. And I sang those words. And then just a few months later, he did just that. He took everything apart. And similarly, you just reminded me that he did it again in this other way by taking water polo off the table. He took that world apart too, all because he's kind and because he doesn't want me to live a life that is not glorifying to him, one that is not what he has called me to, one that is not walking in obedience to him, one that is not fulfilling the gifts that he has for me. Because water polo is something that I did. And it's something I was gifted at, but it wasn't a spiritual gift to be good at water polo. And I was not using the gifts that he had given me in water polo. I had been treating it as if it was my purpose. And he was showing me like, no, I have something bigger and better for you.
I feel like every time that we come to one of these walls, trials, it is because he wants to use us for something bigger and better. And B, it gives us a testimony that we can then minister to others with. And so if I recall, when you were 12 or so, you had some kind of recognition of a message.
Yes. So I got saved when I was in 5th grade. And then when I was in 7th grade, right around the time that I got baptized again, I remember being at a service at H&W, and I think it was just a Sunday morning service, and they did an altar call. And so the altar call could be for anything. And for the first time in my life, I heard the Lord. And people have asked me before, what does God sound like? I don't know. I remember, when it talks about like the still, small voice, that was what it was. But I knew that it was God. And so I was in 7th grade. I was 12 years old. And I heard him tell me that he was calling me into full-time ministry. I didn't even know what that meant. I didn't even know what it meant, but I know that I heard him say it. And so I walked forward with all the confidence of a 12-year-old girl who had just heard from the Lord. And I, shook the hands of fellowship of my pastor and the other people who were congratulating me on this amazing call that I didn't even understand. But I heard his voice. And I never forgot that moment in my life, but I remember just thinking, through all these years, like that I had it in the back of my head that I'd heard that, and I knew that it was the Lord telling me that. But because I didn't even understand what it meant, it was easy for me to just say, well, okay, well, at some point I'll figure that out, or at some point he'll show me what that means, and I just had no idea. I had no idea. And as you're saying too, I believe that all of these things in my life were ways that God was preparing me for this full-time ministry, that I had no idea what that would look like. And I don't mean full-time ministry in the sense that I'm in full-time ministry now, in the sense that I work for a church. I'm talking about full-time ministry in the sense that ministry is the way that I am sharing the gifts that God is giving me with other people. And that does not have to be on staff at a church. That does not have to be on a stage, but it does have to be using those gifts that he's given me. And for me, now I see the way that the Lord has always been orchestrating things, moving me towards this. When you and I talked before, we had talked about spiritual gifts. And over the years, since my brother died, I've taken the test many times. And the number one gift that always comes back for me, my spiritual gift, is faith. And I believe that that is a direct result of seeing the hand of God and his sovereignty in my life over many, many years. And so even with my brother, the way that the Lord orchestrated every single part of that story, the way that he was drawing me to himself beforehand, that is not by accident. That is his loving kindness towards me. That is his sovereignty. That is him knowing that I'm about to go through the worst thing that I could possibly imagine, and him showing me that I'm not gonna leave you, that I always had you. And I don't know what I would have done had he not done that prior to my brother dying. I don't know what I would have done if that had happened and the Lord hadn't been drawing me to himself. And so I see the Lord's hand in my life over and over again. I see that I would not have gone to Indiana had my brother not died. I would not have met my husband, who I met in Indiana. I would not have these children that I have now. And all of that is the ways that I see his sovereignty, the way that we think that these are coincidences, but people of faith know that they're not. They know that it is a God who cares about details and a God who works in every single part of our lives for our good and for his glory. And so for me, as a result of my brother's death, faith is my number one spiritual gift, because Psalm 27:13, I am sure of this, that I will see the goodness of God in the land of the living. You know, that night that I told you about, that I felt the manifest presence of God. And as a result of that, afterwards too, I have seen the goodness of God in the land of the living. I have experienced the goodness of God in the land of the living, and that changes you. And, you know, I have these seasons of my life, of course, that I'm, you know, not honoring the Lord with the things that I'm doing, but he is faithful. And even in the midst of those, he kept showing me that I'm not the one who holds on to him. He's holding on to me, and praise God for that. He never left me. He never let go of me.